Sounding clear? Okay, great. I really want to thank Land of Medicine Buddha for bringing us here tonight. I'm here on behalf of Dharma Voices for Animals. Dharma Voices for Animals is a global animal advocacy organization that has centers or employees all over the world, particularly in Asia and Southeast Asia, also here in the States. I'm coming on board as the director of U.S. Centers in a few weeks. I'm starting soon, so I'm excited to be here at the Land of Medicine Buddha. This is such a beautiful place. And my wife and I have been working for the National Park Service for the last 5 years, and we were park rangers. And I was attending the Dharma Voices for Animals monthly meditation. I was telling the people there about this program that I give in the national park that's all about the environment and some challenges we're facing. And the president of DVA, Bob, said, "Hey, you should give us a call. I want to talk to you." So that started this whole conversation that brought me to where I am now. I'm here with you guys today on behalf of DVA and starting to do this talk that's been done hundreds of times in the national park up in Marin County. I don't know if you guys have ever been to the Point Bonita Lighthouse. That's where this program originated in the Marin Headlands, and it's now being adapted to share outside of that location. So it's really cool, though. We were interpretive rangers. And there's a different types of park rangers in the Park Service. There are the law enforcement rangers, they carry the guns, and then there's the talking rangers, and that's the interpretive rangers. And they're the ones that wear the flat hats, and they're kind of an iconic character. People like to take pictures with all of us, especially my wife when she has braids. She looks like a Disneyland character. And but we do interpretation, and interpretation is interesting. There's different principles of interpretation, and one of the principles of interpretation is not just education, but provocation. And by that, what it means is that the goal of the park ranger interpreter is to help you, provoke you to have new thoughts and new ideas about an object or a place you might not have thought about like that before. So leaving with a different experience, going to the lighthouse thinking you're going to see a lighthouse and leaving the lighthouse with like history, ecological information that you might not even have been interested in, but now you have it. Um, so that's kind of the training that I have to give a talk in that vein. So that's kind of what I'm going to do tonight. I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a story. I think it's a very important story, and I'm excited to share it with you. My path as a Buddhist began 20 years ago when I was hitting a really dark emotional place, and a friend of mine gave me a book from His Holiness the Dalai Lama on how to practice happiness, and I got into Buddhism, and like most things, if I find it interesting, I go all in. So I got really obsessed and was really into the Tibetan tradition for a little while, and worked with a Rinpoche, and then I found a Zen group that I really got into, and then a Vipassana group that I really got into. And my practice currently is I really wanted to get to what did the Buddha say? And I got into the Dhammapada and started practicing the simplicity of the five precepts, the Four Noble Truths, the Noble Eightfold Path, the three Dharma seals, practice of metta meditation, and counting my breath is such a powerful practice. All of that together for me is really what works. So I'm grateful to be here on behalf of DVA. I'm grateful to be here to share my experience as a park ranger, and also to be here, someone who loves the Buddha's teachings. What a beautiful place. My wife and I are in our off season right now, so we just spent a month out in Arizona. We usually work in the summer, then we're off in the winter. So we just spent a month in Arizona, beautiful desert, very dry, the saguaro cactus, really beautiful scenery. And then driving up here today into the Land of Medicine Buddha through that little gorge down the street. For anyone that's online that hasn't been here, you got to come here sometime. It's such an amazing spot. There's this creek down here with this beautiful gorge full of amazing redwood trees. And I know it was flooding here last week, so it's very rich and vibrant energy coming out of there. And I was listening to Shanti Deva on my way over here today. The Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life is one of my favorite, very long poem type of a teaching. I was listening to that on the way here today and just feeling so grateful that I get to be here with you guys. And last night I went out and I looked up at the stars and I got chills. I got a jolt of electricity went through my system. And I thought about Shakyamuni Buddha. The story goes he was sitting here on a beam of light into a dark world, to teach us love and compassion. And I love that idea of him being sent here on a beam of light to teach us love and compassion in this dark world that's dominated by cravings and so much suffering. And I feel that I've been sent here tonight by the Buddhas because I did not grow up as a Buddhist, but I have done a lot of work, and somehow my karma has fruitioned to this moment right here, right now, that we're together. This is a gift to me to be here. And there's a beautiful story about the Buddha when he found enlightenment. The Buddha worked so hard and sacrificed so much to find his own enlightenment. And he was in bliss, and he said, no one will want to do what I did. This is going to be too hard for a world of sleepwalkers. And he thought for a moment, he said, yes, but not everyone is asleep. There are people who are like the lotus pond. There are people who are under the water, who are drowning. There are people who are just starting to peek up above the water. And then there are those who are above the water, the lotus that is fully alive and awake. And I feel like anybody who's here, whether you're on Zoom or you're here in person, you are that lotus because your karma brought you here today so that we could all be together and we could learn about what's happening to the earth and what a beautiful sacred place this is and how important it is for us and our survival. So I'm so happy. I was getting emotional. I was telling my wife about that last night. I was getting emotional. I held it together better today. But what I want to do, I want to tell you guys a story about what happened and what's happening now. And this story started at the Point Bonita Lighthouse. I know the people on Zoom are not going to be able to see this so well, but the Point Bonita Lighthouse is on the Pacific coast. If you could imagine being in this spot, it's about 2 miles west of the Golden Gate Bridge. The lighthouse sits out on a little point, and you've got the entire Point Reyes, the ocean, San Francisco, the Presidio, back around. You can see downtown San Francisco on the Golden Gate Bridge. It's a really beautiful place, and there's thousands of sentient beings there. Birds and whales and harbor seals. It's a beautiful place. So that's where I love to be. I love being near the ocean. But I want everybody online and here to just close your eyes for a minute. Imagine a really beautiful place that you love, a place in nature that you feel is a special place for you in your heart. I mentioned these redwood trees driving up here today. I love the redwood trees and that smell. I want you to pause for a second and think about a favorite spot. And someone here in person, what's a spot you love? Anybody want to share a spot? A park or a location, anything? Yes, I mean, yes. Redwood National Park, yeah. Tyler, you have a favorite place? Ah, amazing. People often ask us when we're working as park rangers, what's your favorite national park? And I go like this. I say, I got my favorite tree park. I love the ocean park. I got mountain parks. And then there's Utah. Utah is its own world. You will never see anything like Utah anywhere else on the planet. You can see green trees and brown mountains all over the place. But Utah is, I'm with you, is amazing. So if you haven't been, I recommend it. So whatever place you thought of, for you guys online too, whatever place you thought of as your favorite place, that place is under threat. And that place has gone through major challenges through the years to even be preserved as it is now. So I want to tell you guys a quick story about the stuff that happened on the Pacific coast around the time of the lighthouse to tie it into the topic of my talk tonight. The topic of this is, what is your legacy going to be? And by legacy, I mean, we talk about the definition is the long-lasting implications of your actions, right? And this works really well in Buddhist terminology because we understand karma, cause and effect. Everything we do has a cause and effect. What is our legacy going to be? What are we going to leave behind us? Because we can look back to the 1800s and tell some stories, and I want to do that real quick. So on the Pacific coast in the 1800s, before the gold rush, it was called the fur rush. I got a picture of a harbor seal. Where we work at the Point Bonita Lighthouse, there's a family of harbor seals, a colony of harbor seals. And during the fur rush, trappers from all over the world came and they hunted the marine mammals, the furry critters off the Pacific coast almost to extinction. Up the rivers, they were gone. From the Aleutian Islands to Baja California, no furry animals on the California coast, on the Pacific coast. And they did this with not a whole lot of technology. They did this just with sheer determination, right? And about the same time that was happening, they called it the whaling bonanza. The whales were eradicated. The Pacific population of whales was decimated down to about 2% of what it had been before. So the whales we see now are a tiny fragment of what once thrived in the Pacific Ocean. And they did that with not much technology. They did that with harpoon boats. As they got more and more advanced, they became more and more efficient, right? The same time all of that was going on, I don't know how many people here mentioned redwood trees. 95% of the old growth redwood forests were all harvested. This is all happening at the same time. Only 5% of the old growth forest remains. I love Santa Cruz. I love going up to Jedediah Smith and Crescent City. The smell of, we used to live in Mill Valley, and we would drive over Mount Tam down to Stinson Beach. And there's this one stretch where the ocean air meets the redwood forest. That is magic. That is such a magical experience to smell that. And you smell that in Santa Cruz all the time. It's beautiful. So I love the redwood forest. And I got a picture here of guys that had cut down a big tree, and they're very proud of themselves. And we look at this, and I say, what were they thinking? What were they thinking? How could they do this? I love these trees, and they were cutting them down. Why? Why were they doing this? Well, we know they were driven by greed partially, but they really and truly deeply believed that no matter what they did, they would not have an impact on the earth. They didn't have the science or the technology or the research to even look at a GPS map and see there's no trees past a certain point. They didn't have the technology we had today, but they had this belief, and the belief was echoed by Lewis and Clark in their endeavor as they traveled across the United States. In Lewis and Clark's journals, they said, nature is so bountiful and so infinite and so God-given, nothing we could do would ever make an impact. This is the human thinking that causes total destruction on this planet, that our actions have no consequences to the earth. They thought it in the 1800s, and I'm concerned that it's still happening today, right? So I want to introduce this idea of the eco versus the ego, right? So when the human mind is ego-based, we dominate. We're the top predator, we run the show, we're in charge, right? That's kind of the attitude that we have. And then there's a shift we can make to be more eco-minded, where we're part of the system. And when I was at the Point Bonita Lighthouse, I would challenge people, when you come out here, be one of the beings. Don't think of yourself as the top being. We're surrounded by thousands of beings. Even in this forest, there's banana slugs and frogs. I heard crickets and frogs. I love frogs. I think frogs are one of the coolest. And they're out there chirping and singing, right? I like frogs because they're thin-skinned and sensitive. And that's how I can be sometimes. So I think that's why I like frogs so much. But when we think about being eco-minded, we're part of the ecosystem rather than the top dominant part of the ecosystem, right? So I want to shift gears now. We talked about the 1800s and what happened, what legacy they left behind, right? We can look at the stumps. We can hear the stories of the harvesting of the whales. We can hear about the harbor seals, and we could be disgusted, honestly. How could they do such a thing? They left a really ugly legacy behind. So what is our legacy? What legacy are we leaving behind? And this is our little blue speck of dust floating in space, the blue planet, right? Tiny little speck of dust floating through the cosmos. And we're on this thing. And this is our home. This is our home. We got nowhere to go. I don't want to live on Mars, even if they develop jets. I like it here. I like the trees. I don't want to leave, right? So the information I'm going to share with you guys, there's two things I want to tell you real quick. The first is that everything I'm going to share with you is easily found and verified from reputable sources, okay? Second thing, and more importantly, none of the information I'm going to share with you guys has ever happened in the history of this planet. So what I mean by that is that it's not cyclical. One of the main arguments you'll hear against any sort of concerns about the environment is that the Earth goes through cycles. That is true. I'm going to point that out in a little bit. These cycles are always followed by a mass extinction event. So it's not a good thing that the Earth goes through major cycles, but it is true. However, I'm not presenting any cyclical information here. First time any of this has ever happened. So I want to split it up into what's happening in the water, on the ocean, and on the land, right? So first I'm going to go in to one thing. Before I begin any sort of environmental talk, when I give this, I'm usually out at the, like I said, in a national park, and I see a large group of people, and I'll start getting to this point, and people start drifting away. And I say, before you go, the reason why an eco talk is important is because of the economy is tied to the ecosystem. A lot of people don't think about this. But in 1972, a group of MIT scientists developed a massive study. It's called Limits to Growth. Look this up, 1972, Limits to Growth. And they looked at what is going to happen with the way we're using our planetary resources. And they made some very alarming predictions. They thought we were going to run out of fossil fuels by the end of the century before we hit 2000. We didn't, which is almost a curse because we're able to burn up even more and more and more. But what they predicted was massive societal collapse in the 2040s because primarily of pollution of the ecosystem. When we don't have enough fresh water to produce industrial goods or raise crops, we got problems. And so they made that prediction in 1972. A lot of people called them alarmists. They were laughed at a little bit. By the 90s, people started scratching their heads saying, some of this is actually tracking. And 50 years later, so I was born in 1972, so there's a good year. 50 years later, in 2022, a group of scientists got together again. It was audited by KPMG. The reason I'm name dropping that is one of the big four accounting firms. So it was a very reputable accounting firm did an audit of this study. The study was republished in the journal, the Yale Journal of Industrial Ecology. And what they found was that we're actually ahead of schedule for collapse. They had a couple different options. One was that technology is going to accelerate so quickly it'll solve all of our problems. Technology is accelerating faster than they expected. But what has happened is population has skyrocketed, and a lot of people are going along with what they call business as usual. The way to save things is with technology and more modest lifestyle, more eco-friendly choices. Most of the earth is going away from eco-friendly choices and going into maximalist ideology, right? Using as much as they can. So it's a grim outlook, but we can still make a change if we make change quickly. They predicted food collapses first, economy collapses second, population collapses third. That does not sound good. And we're already facing some of these things today. I'll get into that in a little bit. So that's why we're going to get into the environmental talk now, but I wanted to talk about the importance of the environment for the economy, for anyone that might just be leaning more that way, right? So we need a healthy ecosystem for the economy to survive. So first thing I want to talk about is the water, the ocean. 70% of this earth is made up of the ocean. Most of the water on this earth is salt water. We don't have a whole lot of fresh water. But what's happening in the ocean is a major problem because 70% of the oxygen we breathe comes from the ocean. Phytoplankton and algae produces the air that we breathe. And if the ocean is filled with plastic and destroyed, we're literally taking oxygen away from ourselves. So this is a picture of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. You guys might have heard of that. There's garbage patches everywhere. But the problem isn't what you even see on the top. The problem is these gigantic islands are floating and the sun is beating down on them and they're melting. And they're creating massive plastic smog under the water, under the top of the water into the ocean, which is creating dead zones of massive size. So as the ocean dies, the oxygen production dies, we have a hard time surviving. So there's this big lie we've all been told that plastic is recyclable. So let's say you have a bottle and it says number 2 on it. You feel good about yourself. You walk over, you open the blue can. Hey, I recycled that. Good job. I feel good about myself. What percentage would you guess of that plastic is recycled? I'm not talking about toothbrushes. There's toothbrushes on this planet 100 years old that are still biodegrading or degrading. Plastic wrappers from Dorito bags, the plastic containers from salads, the greens, none of that's recyclable. I'm talking about blue bottle with the number of the can. Who wants to guess what percentage of that is actually recycled? I know you know the answer. Tyler, what do you guess? 5%. You got it. 5% is all that is actually recycled. So this may not seem like a big deal, but over the course of a lifetime, 9 billion people carrying their own water bottle makes a difference, right? So there's great resources to go plastic free. Look up plastic free shopping. We just found this great place called Zero Waste Outlet. There's a zero waste store. You can get everything, including your cleaning supplies, all plastic free. They even ship it to you in compostable stuff. So there are more and more resources out there to go plastic free. We got to make a difference and do those things. So the ocean is also suffering from acidification, from pollution from cities, but from animal agriculture. Tons and tons and tons of manure is washed into the ocean. This is a picture of the Gulf Coast, and you can see there is dead zones where no life can exist right off the coast. The farms run off the nitrogen from the soil, and the manure goes into the ocean and creates dead zones. So the oceans are struggling. But now I want to switch gears and talk about the land, okay? So 30% of the earth is covered by land, and I want to start off by introducing what's called the Living Planet Index Report. This is from 2020, and there's an updated version of 2022 from the World Wildlife Fund. You guys ever heard of the World Wildlife Fund? They got a cute little panda bear. They do an exhaustive study every year of over 5,000 different types of species: mammals, birds, amphibians, reptiles, and fish. And they do an exhaustive study account to see how many animals there are on this planet, biodiverse wild animals on this planet. And what they have found is that since they started doing this monitoring, once again about 50 years ago in 1970, there's been a reduction of 73%. This is a slide I've been using for the last couple of years from 2018 that says 69. They just came out with their new report from 2020, and the number's gone down 4%. So there's been a 73% reduction in biodiverse wildlife just in the last 50 years. Just in the last 50 years, this is what's happening. And one of the reasons it's happening is because of the population of humans. As the population skyrockets, there's just not enough space for all of us. This is not an infinite planet. We have finite resources, and we're using them up dramatically fast. So this shows as the population skyrockets, so does extinction events. Have you guys ever heard of the Holocene extinction? It's what we're currently in right now. This is a chart from National Geographic. We're currently in the Holocene extinction. So you can see on this graph that there are ups and downs, cycles on there. Those are the cycles that the Earth has gone through, always followed by a mass extinction event. We're currently in the Holocene extinction, and there's two things that make this Holocene extinction unique, unlike any other extinction event in the history of extinction events. The first thing that makes this extinction event unique is that the rates of extinction are currently 1,000 times greater than ever seen before in the history of this planet. 1,000 times greater than in any of these other extinction events. Now, what's even more tragic is that this is the first extinction event in the history of the Earth that's being caused by a single species. Who wants to guess what that species is? Not funny, but it is. Good guess. It's true. This is the first extinction event caused by a species, and we are the ones causing this extinction event. With our population and the things we're doing to the Earth, we are wiping out the biodiversity on this planet at a rate never seen before. Just in the last 2 years, it went from 69 reduction to 73% reduction. So dramatic loss. And why is this happening? So what we're doing with the land is what's causing the problem, right? So I've got a chart here, and it shows three different categories for mammals. Livestock that we grow for food, mammals, so cows, pigs, lambs, goats, whatever other mammals we grow for food. The second category is humans, and the third category is biodiverse wildlife that is mammalian. Three categories to divide up all the mammals on Earth. Who wants to guess what percentage of mammals on Earth are livestock? Cows, pigs, and chickens. If you have good eyesight, you could probably guess. 60% of all mammals on Earth are farm animals we raise for food. 36% of mammals on Earth are humans, which leaves 4% of mammals on this earth are actually wild animals, biodiverse wildlife. This number has skyrocketed in the last century, and particularly in the last 35 years or so. The number of animals we're growing for food is skyrocketing because as the population grows and people have certain food choices, there's no land left for anything other than our farming. So the rainforest is another big concern. I talked a little bit, I'm talking about the land now. So the ocean is where we get 70% of our oxygen. The other 30% of the oxygen we breathe comes from the forests. We're in a very oxygen-rich environment today. These trees are pumping out, man. It's just positive, negative ions down here. Beautiful, positive energy. But the rainforest is being destroyed at a rate of 80,000 acres per day. I believe it's an acre every second is destroyed, partially for grazing farm animals, but a lot of it is for growing crops. Soybeans and other crops are grown. Over 92% of soybeans grown in the Amazon are used to feed farm animals. Cows, pigs, chickens, and even fish eat soybeans now, right? It's not just all the vegans eating up the tofu. So we look at this picture, we see cattle in the Amazon. You may say, okay, fine, I'll just stop eating beef. Everyone's heard that story before. But while cows are a big part of the problem, we got more problems too. So this is a chart that shows the number of farmed animals for food has nearly doubled in the last 35 years. And then this other chart shows how many animals that we grow and what they are. And if we look at it, it's hard to see, I know, for you guys, but we have egg-laying hens, turkeys, pigs, and cows make up about 10%. 90% of animals raised for food, for meat, are meat chickens. So everybody thinks they're doing this eco-friendly thing by just eating chicken, but there's so many of them. The numbers are about 100 million cows, 125 million pigs, 257 million turkeys, 400 million egg-laying hens, 9.2 billion chickens are slaughtered every year. $9 billion. So that's a huge number, a major difference. And the problem is the manure, as I mentioned earlier, that's running off. Farm animals produce twice as much manure as all humans put together. There was an article recently published about geological records of the Earth. And if there are humans here in 1,000 years, they will look back on this time period and they will see a permanent geological record of animal manure. And it will leave a permanent mark of when we farmed this many animals. Because the manure is covering the planet. It's incredible to think about it. It's over 1 trillion pounds of manure from animals a year. And this is going into our water supply in the oceans, and it's leaving a permanent mark, as I said. So another big concern is how much water goes into this project. We don't have a whole lot of water on the earth in the first place, very little fresh water, but we use so much of it on animal agriculture, it's incredible. And everybody knows, back to the cow thing, everybody knows, oh, cow, that's a lot of water for beef, 1,800 gallons per pound of beef. I'll eat chicken, only 500 gallons for a pound of chicken. That's a more eco-friendly choice, right? But we go back to the numbers. I calculated this. This is my best estimate. Cows use around 180 billion gallons of water per year. That's drinking water to keep them alive and to feed them. Chickens, 4,000 billion, 5,000 million gallons of water per year. So we've been told this white meat is safer or better, whatever, but the amount of resources that are going into this are absolutely insane. So now this is a busy slide, and I've got something to help you guys kind of make sense of this, but I'm going to go over how much land we actually have on Earth. And I think what I'm going to do, so the people on Zoom can see me better too. Is that okay there? So I'm going to explain this slide real quick, and then I'm going to go over what it means. So this is a slide from the United Nations that shows how much land we have and what we're doing with the land, right? It's hard to follow, so I would give this talk and people would be looking and it was hard to explain. So I came up with a 10-foot rope. And this 10-foot rope represents the blue planet that we live on, this beautiful little place called Earth. And as I said earlier, 70% of the Earth is ocean. That's where we get 70% of our oxygen. So then that leaves us about 30% of the Earth is actual land, right? How's this catching on the Zoom? Am I okay there? 30% of the Earth is actual land, but we have uninhabitable land. This is beaches and mountains and deserts and snow-capped peaks. So of the land on Earth, we only got about this much habitable land. About 70% of the Earth is habitable. And this is what I want everybody to take away from this talk. This is our habitable land, and what are we doing with this habitable land? We're using 50% of the land on Earth to raise crops and graze animals for crops and for animal agriculture. This does not include land to grow crops for humans. 50% of the land we can live on, we're using it for animal agriculture. That's a problem. When we've talked about how much water goes into it, how much devastation happens, half the Earth's habitable land is used for animal agriculture. So, I've got good news, though. Everybody's like, good. This is getting depressing. The good news is that it's not news. We've known this for a long time, right? The United Nations came out in 2011 with a massive study. The IPCC, Intergovernmental Policy Panel on Climate Change, came out with a massive study that showed a dietary shift is going to save us. Can we do it is the question. And it wasn't just the United Nations. Oxford, Cambridge, Stockholm, NYU, Harvard, Princeton, Stanford, the USDA, the US EPA, everybody is saying the same thing. I got a great quote from Oxford University. Avoiding meat and dairy is the single biggest way to reduce your impact on Earth. Oxford University, respectable group. I also give this talk in the Bay Area, so I have a quote from Stanford and Cal. They did a massive study in 2022, and their results found that our best and most immediate chance to reverse this trajectory is by a dietary shift, right? So I've showed you guys all those numbers and how that's possible or why that's possible. Or not so, I'm sorry. I've showed you those numbers, but how is that possible? Well, this is a chart that shows you can feed 14 times as many people on a plant-based diet as on a standard American diet that's high in animal products. 14 times as many people on the same square footage. So I got to go back to my rope to give you guys this visual. So here we go. We've got the Earth again. 70% of the Earth is ocean. From this ocean, an estimated 2 to 3 trillion marine animals are killed every year for food. The fishing industry receives $50 billion in global subsidies. The fishing industry alone, trillions of animals, okay? So now we're going to go, here's back to our Earth, how much habitable land we have. This is how much we're currently using. As I said 1 second ago, we could reduce this by, we could feed 14 times as many people if the world ate a plant-based diet. What that looks like is the entire world could survive on this much farmland. And all of this could go back to nature, biodiverse wildlife could thrive, and we would stop destroying our home. Now, what's more concerning is what's happening on this land from other perspectives as well. I mentioned earlier numbers about how many animals are raised for food. Current estimates are that on this much land animals alone, 92 billion animals are killed for food every year. Now, as a Buddhist, this makes me want to cry. The Buddha taught one should not slay nor cause to slay in the Dhammapada. The Buddha lived on this beautiful planet 2,500 years ago. And on this planet 2,500 years ago, there existed maybe 100, maybe 150 million people. Shanti Deva says, we steal the lives of fishes and deers. And to think about that, 150 million people living 2,500 years ago had no agriculture like we do today. The Buddha was sent here on a beam of light into a dark world to teach us love and compassion. But we humans are destroying this beautiful place, and in the process of doing so, killing 92 billion animals every year just from the land and trillions from the ocean. I get emotional thinking about that. What is our legacy going to be when we do that type of damage to this earth? The other disturbing thing is that $540 billion every year are pumped into animal agriculture, subsidized, because this is so not sustainable and so expensive and so inefficient. It has to be propped up and supported by governments so that when you go to the grocery store, a steak doesn't cost $100. And while this is happening on our habitable land, 800 million people are living in starvation conditions, while every single year, 9 million people die of hunger-related causes. Estimated 25,000 people per day die of starvation on this earth. Every 4 seconds, a human being dies of starvation. I've been talking for 38 minutes to think about how many humans have died since we started this talk, while the animals in cages never miss a meal. It is tragic beyond comprehension. This is beyond an environmental concern. This is an ethical dilemma. Scientists have done repeated studies and found you could end world hunger with a $40 million subsidy every year. You could also end world hunger with the crops grown just in the United States. But we feed all these crops to the farm animals, get a very poor yield on investment. It takes 16 pounds of crops to get 1 pound of animal flesh, while those 16 pounds of crops could end world hunger. So this is a tragedy that's beyond comprehension. And to think about the Buddha walking the earth with 100 million people here, and now we have 9 billion people and 92 billion animals slaughtered for our taste pleasures every year. It is beyond tragic. So I have some good news I'm going to continue with, and that is that, if you guys have heard of Bloomberg Financial has shown that the plant-based food market has gone from 30 to 60 billion just in the last couple years. It's estimated to hit 160 billion by the end of the decade, right? This has been called, the plant-based movement is being called the fastest growing lifestyle in the history of the earth, fastest growing social justice movement in the world. In the US, a 500% increase in plant-based eaters in the last 10 years. The UK has a 370% increase, the EU 50% just in the last 2 years. We get to give this talk out in the, to people from all over the world. Australians are ahead of us. Germans knock us out of the park. The Nordic countries make us look like cavemen. We are way behind here in the States. We have some work to do to catch up to countries that are ahead of us on this adoption. So I said earlier something that is interesting, right? So what I said was thinking about cause to slay. The Buddha said one should not slay nor cause to slay. This word cause is important when we look at these numbers. What's causing these numbers to change? We live in a supply and demand economy. We live in a supply and demand world. We literally vote with our dollars for what we want. When we go to the grocery store, this is a passive decision. You can buy dairy milk full of suffering and environmental destruction, or you could buy a plant milk, an eco-friendly option that no animals had to suffer for. The options, it's passive. It's a passive decision. Instead of picking up this, you pick up this. You vote with your dollars for what you want to see, because change has always happened from the ground up. Systemic change, if you look back at the abolition of slavery, women's rights, human rights, women's rights to vote, all of these things have happened when individual people have taken personal responsibility for their own actions. When we take accountability for what am I doing, change happens. It's not going to happen from the top down. They got the power, they got the money. We have the control by the choices we make. And as I said, you used to go to the grocery store, you'd see one thing, now you see 10 different types of milk, 10 different types of hot dogs and burritos and hamburgers. Hey, beans and rice are the cheapest food in the grocery store. If you want to buy a delicious vegan burger, go for it, but you don't have to. You can live healthy and more eco-friendly with different food choices. So, yes, so I just wanted to make that point about the supply and demand. So I always have to throw this out because this is the number one thing I hear from people. Hey, I tried to drink almond milk, but I heard it was bad, so I gave up. This chart just shows all of the milks. I have to throw this in here because I hear this so often, it's almost comical. Dairy is the worst in every category. Okay, almond milk uses more water than the other plant milks, but I like oat milk personally. There's other options out there, but you can see I just had to throw this in because people really get hung up on almond milk water. I want to talk real quick. Another thing I hear all the time, well, regenerative farming is this whole thing, and we're going to be able to use less land and more friendly ways. Regenerative farming, if you do some research, is a branding advertisement from animal ag to make us continue not changing. It's been called a branding exercise, a myth, and a hoax by people who are aware of the truth about the impact. The thing is, it's just not scalable. You can't feed billions of people with regenerative animal agriculture. Grass-fed beef is one of these things people talk about. I can't remember if it's 3 earths or 14 earths. You would need so much grass to feed everybody grass-fed beef. You would have to wipe out the entire United States and Canada and have grass fields just for the amount of cows that people eat to eat grass-fed beef. It's not realistic. And those cows live longer, drink more water, have more manure, so it's not sustainable from that component either. So regenerative farming is a branding hoax that's just trying to get people to not change. So, okay, so I'm getting to the end of this thing, and I mentioned in the beginning, what is our legacy going to be, right? And there's that old joke about the ostrich sticking their head in the sand. You know, I put this in my talk because when I would give this out of the parks, people sometimes by this point would be putting their fingers in their ears and walking away, right? This is not easy to hear. I'm grateful you guys have stuck this out. This is important information. I haven't sugarcoated it. I've given you the straight truth that you can easily find. What is our legacy going to be? When people look back on us in 50 or 100 years and they say, they had all of this on Netflix for free, on YouTube, you could get this information, and we didn't do anything? There's so much misinformation out there, but if you sift through who's paying for the science, you can get to the truth. Most of the information we've been told is by companies that are trying to keep us in the dark, keep us confused. But people are waking up. I was on Instagram the other day, and Ricky Gervais had that slide about the 60% cows. He was doing a stand-up act talking about how many wild animals there are. That made me so happy. I'm like, I use that slide when I talk, and Ricky Gervais is doing that. So everywhere you go right now, you're hearing about this stuff. I hope I was able to plant some seeds and allow you to start thinking about some of this stuff differently, because what is our legacy going to be, right? And I want to wrap this up and open this up for discussion, but I wanted to bring some Buddhist ideology into this real quick. You know, I got onto the Land of Medicine Buddha website just to look at it and see where I was going and get some information. And the Land of Medicine Buddha website asks us why we're here to practice the 5 precepts. No killing, no stealing, no sexual misconduct, no lying, and no intoxicants. If you look at the Pali Canon, the Buddha taught these 5 precepts as the minimum moral requirement for the layperson. The monks had 14 to 100 precepts, depending on where they were, but the Buddhist community, the lay people, were asked to practice these 5 as the minimum. While we're here, the land of medicine Buddha, we're asked to not step on an insect. What would we do if we left here and we practiced the precepts? No harm. Practicing ahimsa, nonviolence towards all beings. How beautiful would this world be? What would change if each of us took those precepts on and followed those precepts and made a change from the inside out to live differently? What would this world look like? Would it look different? Would those charts be different if more people practiced ahimsa? There's a teaching from the Buddha that says ahimsa is the highest dharma. The law of nonviolence is the ultimate law. There's probably more ultimate laws, but that's what that one sutra said. So I love that idea. The Dalai Lama, we have the picture of His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, here with us. He's been quoted many times about sentient beings. That's how I found Buddhism. About sentient beings. What is a sentient being? Any being that wants to live life. There's more technical terms with a nervous system and a spine. Any being that wants to live its life deserves its life. A metta meditation, may all beings be happy, may all beings be safe, may all beings be healthy, may all beings be at peace. Not just those I love and not just those that look like me, all beings. May they all be happy. May they all be safe. May they all be healthy, and may they all be at peace. I'm really grateful that you guys were here with me today. Dharma Voices for Animals does great work. If you want to get involved or if you have more questions, please ask me. I could send you to the website. It's beautiful. They do a lot of great work worldwide. And I'm very honored to be here with you guys today. And this is something I'm very passionate about. So thank you for listening. And I would love to have questions and answers. Anyone wants to share a story, please participate. I know there's some people online too. So, hey guys. Hey, Marcy and Paul. Some of our friends on there. So, oh yes, and there are 2 more talks scheduled. There's one on March 28th and another one, I believe, on April 25th. And all of that is available on the Land of Medicine Buddha website. So, the last question I wanted to pose to anybody who is here, I know the medicine Buddha is the healing Buddha. People who are regular practitioners here, what would the medicine Buddha do? If the medicine Buddha was here right now and showed up and was sitting with us and heard this information about what's happening to the earth, would the medicine Buddha cover his ears and walk? No. There would be a bright light radiating from that being that would change the world. We are those Buddhas now. We have to walk that path. The Bodhisattva path is the one who's dedicated themselves to ending the suffering of others. It's a very powerful path to walk that path, and it gives you freedom and peace. It comes with some suffering too, because you're trying to help those that are suffering. But the amount of suffering we go through is so minimal compared to the beings we're helping by taking on that path. So, thank you guys. I would love to hear any questions or comments or thoughts. We're open to conversation now, so thank you so much. Hi, Johnny.
Thank you, Forrest. I just want to, can you guys hear me on this? Is this coming through yet? Hello, hello, hello.
I can hear you.
Hey, everybody. I just wanted to say to all of our Zoom family on there, if you want to comment or have a question, feel free to unmute yourself. And everybody in the room, if you could speak into the microphone so our Zoom family could hear as well, that would be great. Thank you. Not all at once.
Yeah, we're sorry for the technical difficulties. We had slideshow that we were trying to get projected onto the screen, and we could not get it to go from the computer to the screen. So we tried 3 different ways, and it just would not connect. So that was a bummer, but hopefully you guys were able to get something out of the talk. So
And also, I can include those in on the email with
Yes.
the
Actually, I
plastic
have a
bag as
great
well too.
slideshow that our Johnny helped put together too that goes through all of the slides with information on the slides. I think that'd be a great thing. If anyone's interested, I'm going to, uh, well, if I guess my email is forrest@dharmavoicesforanimals.org. If anybody is at home or online or here that wants to email me, I can get you that slideshow. It's a really great presentation. It has all of the information, all of the slides with some information on the slides. So, any questions or somebody ask me a question, please. Not a, it doesn't have to be a question. Just participate. I don't want to be the only one talking tonight.
Not a question. We've appreciated hearing you today. Thank you very much for spending your time. It was a very good presentation, concise. Even without all of the slides, it was very impactful. Very thankful.
Thank you for saying that. It means a lot. Appreciate it.
Did a great job.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. What was that? Alex and I have been vegan for 17 years. When I first got into Buddhism, I thought you had to be at first, and I was like, wait a minute, I don't know. And then, but yeah, I had a dog named Frankie, and I was looking at him, and I loved him so much, and I was eating a turkey burger, and I was like, this is an animal, that's an animal. And then I was also going to a meditation group, and that meditation teacher kept talking about eating the light, not the darkness. And then I had another friend who was a hardcore animal rights guy. And between the three of those things at once, I just came home. I said, I'm going to be vegan. And Alex thought I was crazy. So, but she joined me too. She was like, she watched me for a couple days and I didn't die. And then she jumped on board too. Um, so yeah. And the main thing that DVA is our goal is to help Buddhist centers develop a more sustainable, compassionate food choices. Um, there's a different initiatives that the DVA works for, but DVA, Dharma Voices for Animals, works globally to promote animal advocacy and try to align uh, Buddhist centers with the practice of nonviolence and the practice of ahimsa. So, and there's, yes, as I said, I'm new to DVA, so there's people that could give a better definition than I can, I'm sure. So, yeah, so the question was almond milk versus cow's milk.
Marcy had asked about water usage for almond milk versus cow milk.
Yes,
Or
okay,
regular.
Marcy. Where is that slide? I got it right here. I'll explain it too when I show it to you. I'm going to walk up a little closer to the screen here. So, okay, so, and as I said, we can email this to you. So you have all of this. You could Google this. You could just say, how much water does almond milk use? I found this like that. So this is emissions, meaning for dairy, this is dairy milk is across the top. Emissions, land use, and water use. How much square meters for 1 glass of milk? Water usage. So almond milk is bad compared to the other plant milks. Compared to dairy, it uses about 50% as much as dairy. So the dairy industry spent, hey, they spent a lot of money on different things. They've spent money trying to sue different plant milks so they won't call themselves milk. They spent a lot of money smearing almond milk because almond milk uses half as much water as dairy. So the dairy industry is really pretty amazing how much money they spend to keep people confused. So, as most of those organizations. So,
1 second. Could you say it into the microphone, please?
Yeah, the part where you talk about plastic hits home to me. I remember learning about, I think it was Dow early on, funding the whole concept of numbering the types of
yes,
plastics to market to people
yeah,
so that we would get on board with continuing to consume plastic with the idea that it was recyclable. And when only one of the 10 categories
Yeah.
that have is even partially recyclable, but we still go along with it. But
Yeah.
it's amazing how the government and lobbyists have been able to steer all this. And I'm in finance, so I see macro and micro economics and politics at play all the time, and it's really amazing to see, you know, like you said, how much of the stuff is readily available.
Yes.
There's documentaries about it.
Yep.
And you don't really have to really scratch the surface too far to see a lot of this stuff. So it's choice driven.
Yep.
And you know, a scarier component that you didn't really touch on, but kind of obvious, the population growth around the world and how it's continuing to spike, and how industrial nations, you know, their argument that, hey, you know, some of these, you know, the other countries, other parts of the world are starting to cut back.
Yeah.
It's their time to shine. They
Yeah.
wanna
Yeah.
burn the
Yeah.
gold. They want
Absolutely.
the opportunities.
Yeah.
And it's a tough it's a tough discussion, and how to change entire cultures for, you know, huge populations that dwarf America
Yeah.
around the world, and trying to change their minds as they come online. But we can only, you know, do what you're doing.
Yeah.
Continue to share the information, and make good decisions.
Yeah.
Vote differently with your money and with your votes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Awesome. Thank you. Are there any more questions?
Yeah, or Johnny had mentioned that she would love to hear from the audience there. What was the most surprising to hear?
Hmm.
Linda, did you have something that you would like to share about that? I noticed that you unmuted yourself.
Oh,
Hey, Linda.
no, I was thinking about it, but well, I was going to say, first of all, how the whole talk was just amazing. I loved it. And we can share, I think we're going to get a copy of the talk, and we can share that with as many people as we want. Is that correct?
Yeah. So the
Wonderful.
talk, yeah,
Yeah.
it was recorded too, I guess. So, will that be available on the Land of Medicine Buddha site, or?
Yeah, for everybody that registered as well, you will get a recording copy of the session here. And then from there, it will be shareable because you'll have the passcode and all the information as well. And also, I'm seeing something,
Yeah, it'll be-
DVA, do you all share it as well? And is that located on the website?
Yes, I
Okay,
believe so.
great.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
thought
that will be
Arjani
on
was
the
answering,
website.
but I'm sure it'll be available on the website. So,
Fantastic.
I
Good
had
question,
never
Linda.
heard of the DVA before, so I'll be looking more into that. I've done many Buddhism talks at the Land of Medicine Buddha and online, and a lot of talks at the facility, but you know, and meditations and all that. So I'm surprised I never heard of DVA before, but I don't think I have.
good.
So,
Well,
but yeah, one thing I was surprised, I guess I was thinking about the question of what were you the most surprised about? And I guess it was how much land we use to feed the animals. I've heard the thing about, you know, the water usage and everything, but I don't know, I'm just picturing that. And so we're just kind of, there's just so many things we're doing wrong that, yeah, it was just interesting to put it all together.
yeah, thank you for sharing that. And this is overwhelming almost, you know, to hear all of this at once. So,
Yeah.
the simple thing to do is to just take a breath. We can do some, you know, meditation to get grounded, and then make different choices. You know, like I said, it's a passive action. You're going to go shopping anyway. You shop for different items. There's incredible resources. I know there was a question if anyone's possibly thinking about trying a plant-based diet. There's a great resource called Challenge 22. They have certified plant-based nutritionists. They guide you through a 22-day challenge with recipes and Facebook community groups, and it is free.
Hmm.
So Challenge 22. I know we have a couple friends that have done it. One of our friends went through it and then became a mentor because they liked it so much. So they wanted to participate. So, and that's a free online resource. There's so much stuff. I mean, there's a couple guys and gals I follow on YouTube that have, full weeks of meal prep with all of the macros broken down, showing how much protein and everything you're getting every day. And that's all free. It's really so much out there now. So, as I
Yeah.
said, this is the fastest growing lifestyle in history. I didn't mention this, but I found a couple of things interesting from AI. AI has made a couple predictions that I found in an article on The Guardian. One of them was that animal-based products will be off the supermarket shelves by 2040, and that the world will be 100% vegan by 2075. I don't know how we can even make it that long, but maybe that's like people still eating whatever they can hunt or something. But these industries are not sustainable. We're running out of water. We're looking at massive collapse. So anything we can do to make a change now and slow this down, the way I look at it is that even if it does collapse, well, at least I'll have been doing the right thing. At least I'll be on the right side of that story. And obviously, from a karmic standpoint, that's a better place to be than being part of the problem. So,
Yeah. Also, I just wanted to comment that I always thought I was doing a pretty good thing by like no red meat or pork and just eating chicken. And now, now I don't feel so good about it anymore. Like what you said, the chicken's not necessarily the answer either.
yeah.
It's more like kind of give up meat in general.
Yeah, and I didn't, we definitely don't want to make anyone feel bad, but at the same time, if you're having that little nudge of saying, "Wait a second, I can do better," that's great. And people do know, like, oh, these, like you said, people shift towards other options. Chickens have fewer protections than any of the farm animals, and they're raised in such horrific suffering conditions that it's really just horrific to see. If you try to buy pasture raised, great free range, all that stuff, most of that is the same marketing campaign. Birds can turn this much in a crate. They're free range often, so
Yeah.
it's horrible suffering goes through those animals go through, and just even I heard a Buddhist monk once say that there's more suffering in a glass of milk than in a steak. The cow that was raised for beef lived maybe a year and suffered a horrible death, and dairy cows live 6 years or maybe 7 years where they're reimpregnated, their babies are taken from them, and they're milked until they're empty, and then they're killed. So they live a really horrible life, and dairy is very cruel. So it's just things to think about. So
Yeah.
Yeah, and we have one more question here before
Yes.
we wrap up.
Yeah, and
Dave, do livestock animals make up 60% of the species on the planet, or the percent of the biomass?
that is a good question. I know that there's a chart that shows mammalian biomass on Earth, and I think not 60% of the species, no. 60% of the biomass. Yes, I had to read that for a second. 60% of the biomass, not of the species, because there's not. I think the farm animal, there's maybe 5 different species, maybe 6 or 8 if you count some odd animals that we don't eat but they eat, and that's something to always think about when we have these conversations. I was talking earlier about this. Like, we live in a culture where we've been programmed to see these animals as food, but we would never eat our Labrador. But we go over here, they've been programmed to see this animal as food. A Labrador might be food, but a cow wouldn't be. And then over here, they don't eat pigs, but they eat whales. We don't eat whales. We wouldn't eat dolphins, but they eat dolphins, and we eat chickens. And it's all cultural programming that's gone into our thinking. We were taught certain things at a young age. And it's very easy to say this in a Buddhist crowd. May all beings be free. Equal love for all animals is what we practice. Equal love for all sentient beings, not just beings that look like us. Whether you have fur, feathers, scales, all beings, may they be free. So what a beautiful way to live. What a beautiful teaching. So, and yes, I want to make sure that no one misses that. The next talk is going to be a little bit more about farming conditions and animal suffering. And then the last talk is given by a doctor all about plant-based nutrition. And that's going to be the third talk in the series. So this is the 3-series talk, each one having a different focus. So yes, and I'll be giving the second talk on the animals as well. So we're covering a lot of that tonight. This was more focused on the environment, but we are going into that because that came up. So, which is great. That's a good thing to talk about. So, and this is a safe place, and we're all practicing metta with our hearts. So we should be able to talk about these things, right? So, any more questions? Yes, the Bodhi project on the DVA website is really great. It's got a lot of information on there too about what animals go through in modern agriculture. 99.9% of animals are raised on farms where they have no space to live. So very, very few animals live in an open pasture. And even those animals, they want to live a long life. They don't want to die young, and they're all slaughtered early in their lives. So, well, I really appreciate everybody. If there's no more questions, I want to say thank you so much, everybody, for listening and coming. Arjani, thank you. This would not have happened without Arjani. She coordinated this whole thing, and I just showed up tonight, basically. So thank you, Arjani. That was amazing, and we're very grateful for everybody that came, and thank you, Tyler, for helping me set up and everything. So we'll sign off. May all beings be free. May all beings be safe. May all beings be happy. May all beings be at peace. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. Thank you especially to the DVA program and everybody that participated online, and to Forrest and his beautiful wife for making the trip all the way from Arizona. Thank you so much. What a geographic change. Everybody, everybody who registered, keep a lookout for the email. Usually the class recording can take a couple hours to upload. So in the morning, I'll be sending these out, as well as all the other links to the slides and every other, a link for Forrest's email as well, and also for DVA.
Perfect.
And we look forward to joining you and having you join us for the next discussions with DVA. Blessings, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, Arjani.
Bye. Wonderful talk.
Thank you.